This video is about ancestors. And this is probably one of my favorite topics ever. And I didn't really prepare anything, so we're just gonna go off the cuff here. But ancestors, okay. So the idea is you came from someone, right? Came from your mom, your dad, they came from someone, etc., etc. And you've heard, right, that things get passed down. Like, the only thing that you hear about getting passed down, by the way, is like, breast cancer runs in my family, or this runs in my family, or this runs in my family. And you can use that as an example of that things are passed down to you. And they can be very positive, extremely positive. The spirit of who you are, in a lot of ways, can be fleshed out because of this ancestral energy that flows through. And yet, negative things can be passed on too. And the reason that I'm mixing this into the ghost stories is because a lot of people want to tune in to their family through like a medium, right? And then the medium says, your Aunt Judy is talking to me, and then it's this dialogue with this passed over spirit. When actually a better way that I've found, or not better, but just a different way that I've found, is through actually tapping into just the vibrational signature of your ancestors of a certain frequency. Because the idea is if you're wanting to connect, if you're wanting to tap in, then there's usually a reason. And just with the vibration enough, you can figure out what you need from that. And then there can be a communication channel that's now open. So the idea is that these energies are passed on. Even Nassim Haramein was talking about in like physics, the spiraling energy comes from and through your back from your ancestors and then is passed on to you. And this energy, why it's important, is because, especially in the West, especially in America, we've lost our roots, right? There's no roots. We live in these places that have been around, like cities that have been around for 20, 50, 100 years, not that long. There's no foundation, and we're just kind of like wobbling around, and we don't remember where we came from. And so to root in isn't really important, and the rooting is your support from behind when it comes to the ancestral energies. It's the backboard that holds you up. It's like, I've got your back. That's the feeling of it. So when we're talking about ancestors, it's that feeling from behind, whereas when you're talking about the other energies, you're like, higher guidance, right? You're talking about spirit, spirit guides, ETs, all coming down, and then you've got the earth from above. But what's behind you? Your ancestors are behind you. So in your ancestral lineage is carried the tribal soul of your spirit. It's cool because there's so much mixed breeding of different cultural groups that we've got a lot of diversity in our spirit because of this, which is so cool. And the thing is so much can be found there. So much wisdom, so much frequency, so many gifts can be found. And then also so much shit can be passed on. Because the idea is that you have 7 generations back that influence you right now. So any trauma, any war, any rape, any crazy thing that has happened, there's a break in the flow of the lineage. So picture it like this. You've got the tribal soul back here, and then it's lineage, and then there's all of the different incarnations, but all the different generations going on and on and on. So after every 7, it repeats, and so it kind of like resets the energy. And in this 7, if there's a break in the flow of love, which is what a war could do, what death could do, what rape could do, what these deceit, like all these different things. If there's a break in the flow of love, it's going to alter then that generation to come. And that generation to come is going to take on that break so that they can acknowledge that it happened and fix it so that the energy can flow again. So it's kind of a little shysty because the crap energy from your ancestors is passed on to you to fix it if they didn't. And it's really imperative that we fix it ourselves, because then it won't be passed on to our children. So ultimately, when we have these moments of, oh, I want to talk to my grandfather that has passed, or I want to, connect with my mother, it's probably because of unfinished business, because of maybe this break in the energy, or it could be because you want extra support. So either way, this method is going to help. So there's this method called family constellations, and it was created by Bert Hellinger after World War II in Germany because, generations of crazy trauma was created because of World War II. And he was like, well, we need to fix this. We need to balance out this so that it doesn't stay a trauma for generations to come. He kind of knew that there was something going to be off. If it's not like it just gets wiped under the rug and everything's good when the next generation comes. It gets passed on. And not only, just the energetics, but the behaviors, everything. So if someone, for instance, was in World War II, my grandpa, for instance, he was in the trenches. His best friend died right next to him in the trenches. That completely altered who he was. He was completely scared and couldn't be himself anymore, which then created this rift with he and my grandma. And then she hated men because he wasn't there, he wasn't available for her. And then that got passed on to my mom. And then there was also this fear of death because that hadn't been fixed. And all of a sudden there's all this chaos and crap that kind of gets passed on to the next generation. And it can also remanifest, where in that lineage, my uncles, who were my grandpa's sons, one of them died in a plane crash, and the other one almost died in a trench, interestingly enough, because he was a concrete builder, and he almost died in a trench. So it's like these energies will start to remanifest if they don't get looked at and they don't get addressed. And the same thing with breast cancer. It's like, what is going on with breast cancer? And the breast cancer is that there's this, what are breasts? They're life-giving things, right? They're giving. So is the vagina, right? So are the ovaries. So when there's a cancer in this, it can often manifest from a festering of overgiving. You might not be the overgiver, but 3 generations back, when all the men died in a war and the women had to give everything, this energy was broken. So that can actually lead to the manifestation of breast cancer, as well as a lot of modern day things like overestrogen, detox, toxicity and stuff. You can watch my breast video for that. The point is, I wanted to give some examples of what this can be. Now, in this practice of family constellation, Bert Hellinger went to the Zulu tribes in Africa to look at how tribal cultures fix themselves, right? And in this particular tribe, whenever they had a current problem, within their circle, they went back. They're like, okay, we need to go back to the ancestors to help us with this challenge. So they went back. And the idea is that we live in a morphogenetic field, which means that all energy, all time space, all frequencies are available right now. Everything's overlaid over itself. So the ancestors are here right now. The ancestors are actually in us right now. That's why we're manifesting their energies. And so what they do in this practice is you embody that ancestor to experience viscerally, or get visions, emotions, whatever, of what that ancestor experienced. So you can go back, figure out what happened, and then repattern it. You can also go back to find good stuff, right? It's like, well, I don't know where I came from. I don't feel connected to anything. You can go back and tune in to the gifts of your lineage. And this is one of the things that I did, which is one of my favorite moments of all time. When I worked deep in this work for over 2 to 3 years. I was doing this 1 to 2 times a week, so I went pretty deep in this. But one of the things that I was doing on my own without a group was I was going into each of my lineages. So I was like, okay, I have Scottish lineage, I have Irish lineage, I have English lineage, I have Native American lineage. By the way, that's how I figured out that I have Native American lineage. Side note. And I did a blind constellation, which I'll explain what that is in a second, but I stood on the energy of what the tribal soul was because I wanted to know where it was, like what my gifts were, what the energy is that's got my back. And I tuned in to, I didn't know it was the Irish because I did it blind, so I didn't know what I was experiencing. It was like I turned over the piece of paper that had it written on it, and I tuned in, and it was the most magical, pure, rainbow, emotional, like kind, loving energy I'd ever experienced. And I just like felt this teardrop of magic in it, and I just was reconnected to it, and I'm like, oh my God. And then I opened it up and I'm like, it's the Irish lineage. I'm like, of course it is. Like, of course that's why right now they have drinking problems, is because they're so sensitive and wonderful. Anyways, and so I reconnected with my Irish part, and you know, I did this with my Scottish part, and it was a bit darker, it wasn't as pretty, but anyways, it's a great way to connect into your support from behind, to connect in with the ancestors. And this is one of the big things that we're missing, that we need to go forward so we don't repeat these patterns. So in family constellation, usually it's done with a group of people. It's pretty much in most major cities at this time, so you can go participate in this, and I highly suggest it. And it's a way of connecting with the spirits. It is, you embody the spirits. And when you do this over and over again, you're like, holy crap, like I become that person. And it's a great exercise for empaths especially, because it's one of the things that taught me boundaries. Because if you're freaking embodying the energy of someone's grandma, you need to get back to yourself. So it starts to distinguish between your own energy and someone else's. So it's a really great practice. I highly suggest it as a nice incubated way for empaths to understand their own energy. Anyways, and so what you're doing is you're coming to the group with a present challenge. I can't find a guy, and every guy leaves me and cheats on me. Whatever your presence challenge is. I have chronic headaches, I don't know, you know, and most of the time, there's something connected to it that's from the lineage. So you connect in with this energy, and then the group actually acts as participants to play out the different parts of this energy and embody it. And once you can see it, like you're seeing it and getting perspective on it, it's not in you, it's kind of like outside of you. You can see it from that perspective, and you can understand it, and it changes your makeup, it changes everything. So if I do the work for my family, if I do the work and work with my grandpa who was in World War II, and this creates death, this creates all these different things that happens, if I do that constellation, it can change my whole family. It changes the whole lineage back. It changes everything. It changes the morphogenetic field. You're creating a new one, which is incredibly powerful. And I've seen this happen. I was doing it because I started doing it by myself once I understood how to do it. I was doing this with my grandma's lineage, who there was some like rape and incest going on like 4 generations back. And I was in Hawaii and swimming with the dolphins, and swimming with the dolphins can bring up any unconscious things. And I was ecstatic. I was having the best time of my life. But I had this pain, this deep, deep pain in my sacral chakra, and I didn't know what it was. And I realized after a week, I'm like, okay, I need to do some work on this. Like, what is this? And I realized that it was this ancestral rape that had happened a few generations back to my grandma's grandma. And the idea is I worked it all out. I like healed the lineage, acknowledged what happened, did the whole thing. And the next day, we had a property in Utah that like my grandma and all them owned, and she was going to sell it when she died, and that was going to be the money for her children, for my mom. And all of a sudden, the next day after I did this, my mom calls me and said, Grandma has put the property up for sale, and all the sisters have gotten together who weren't that connected to each other at the time, and all of this money has now been released to all the sisters, and it's all taken care of. Like, what? Like, it changed when I was working on the female lineage. It changed in the physical right now. Like, can I have a check for what I did. No, but the idea is it released abundance in the family, which I didn't know was, well, I guess it's true, right? The sacral is abundance, it's sexuality, and it released abundance for my female lineage in the present doing that work. So it's really powerful, really potent, and you can do this on your own with these family constellations. I can help you do it. But the idea is just to start beginning to think of the idea of like, hey, when you go to sleep, like, who are my ancestors? Like, can I connect with you? Like, what is my tribal soul? Like, will the tribal soul come to me? And you can do this through shamanic journeying. You can probably do it through ayahuasca, like whatever your intentions are, but you can do it extremely simply right now, right here. And here's an exercise off the cuff. Take a piece of paper and you're going to write say if you're male, then write your male lineage, and if you're a female, write your female, and say, my mom, my grandma, my great-grandma. Write 3 generations, and you can even do a tribal soul, okay? So say my tribal soul of whatever lineage you come from, okay? And step on them. I know this sounds so crazy. You're stepping on a piece of paper with a name written on it. Begin to feel what that feels like. And when I was working with one of my friends, one of my clients, she'd never done this. She had no clue what was going on. And I didn't tell her what I was going to do. And I wrote on one piece of paper, I wrote light. And on one piece of paper, I wrote dark. And I folded them up. She didn't know what it was. She stood on both energies. And she was like, I feel really elated. I feel really dark and depressed. And then she opened the piece of paper and it was dark and it was light. Like, it holds the vibration of that thing, right? So you can start with something, an exercise like that, to start to trust yourself. And this is also your self-pendulum, your self-trust that you're navigating, that you're figuring out, which I love. And then start going with your ancestors and go, I want to feel the tribal soul of this. I want to feel the energy of my great-grandma, and just start playing with this. And there's so much that you can do with this kind of work because you can use it in anything. You can go, okay, well, should I take this job or should I take this job? And you can stand on the energies blind, not knowing which one's which, and feel how the energetics feel rather than using your mind. So it's a great exercise of getting in your body, and you'll start to see how you experience energy as well. Because you could experience energy, you might get visions, you might feel sensations, you might get emotions, you might like fall. There's many things that can happen. So just play with it. And the idea as far as healing the lineage, if you're wanting to play with this on your own, is acknowledging what happened. That's the thing that releases it, because we can't necessarily go back in time and change it. I mean, we kind of can. But the idea is to go back and view it and acknowledge what happened. And you don't need to know the exact story. You just need to understand the energy. It was like, I feel like pain in me, or I feel death. It's like, just acknowledge that there was death. Acknowledge that there was pain, whatever it is, and so that it can release, and you're honoring your ancestors. It's like, oh my gosh, I honor that you went through that. Thank you so much for doing that. Like, that's incredible what you've been through. And then the biggest key is, it's not mine. It's not mine to carry, right? It's not yours to carry. And so much of this that we're carrying around, all these programs, these energies, these manifestations of weird stuff, they're not ours. And also, they're a lot for your ancestors to carry. That's why that they got passed on and they didn't get resolved, because it was too much for them to handle. So what you're going to want to do in this position is say, it's not mine. So I'm not going to take on your breast cancer. I'm not going to take on death or poverty or whatever these energies are. Here you go. I give it back to you. And you hand it back to them, but you make sure that they're supported. Now, what didn't they have? Maybe their husband died in the war, right? Call in the soul of their husband. Maybe they just needed guidance. Maybe they needed more assistance. They needed support, right? So you just call in energetically all of these things they didn't have, so that they are strong enough to hold it this time. And also, if it's just too much, then hand it back to source, right? Hand it just straight back up to source, because it may be too much. So this is the idea. There's a lot to this. It's awesome. It's some of the deepest, most profound work. There could be family secrets that come out. That's what happened with me, finding out about my Native American lineage. There can be great gifts that may have been covered up. You know, maybe there's like witchiness, you know, back in your lineage, and it got covered up that you have the sight, you know, that your female lineage has these gifts, or your male lineage has this certain strength, whatever it is. So just be open to what comes up, because it's so rich, so dynamic. So if you like videos like this, please like, and share, and subscribe. And I'm going to be doing a lot more videos on this channel. So at least every Tuesday, I'm going to be doing one, if not more. So just keep on revisiting, because a lot of information is coming through that I want to share. So keep coming back, and thanks so much for all your guys' support. And I can't wait to hear your different ancestors' reconnection stories, because there is nothing like connecting back to the tribal soul of humanity. It's beautiful. I know we're all into aliens, and we're all into all this other stuff, but the tribal soul of humanity is so incredible. So let's go back to it together.